good to go.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Fab Four. I'm joined by Senator Max Wise, our guest for today, and our co-hosts Scott Franklin and Alic Williams. And Todd Polson could not be in attendance today because he somehow his priorities put his in-laws in front of us. We can't believe it either. So I'm Ben Bertram, and we're glad you're joining us. If you guys don't mind, go ahead and give us a like and a follow on our social media. You'll be able to keep up with us and share us with your friends. And we're excited for today. Like I said, we're joined by our guest, Senator Max Wise. He is the state senator of the 16th district and is no stranger to sports. So we are very glad you're able to join us today, Max. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks everybody for having me. I'm disappointed in Polston, though. I had a lot of good faith that Polston would be able to come strong on this one, but we know who the other three are, so it's okay.
That's right. All right, take it away, Alic.
All right. We're recording this the night before it's coming out. Actually, Max went up to Louisville today and seen Bam. Do you want to give a little update on Bam to start us off here?
Yeah, happy to. I posted on social media just a while ago that I was able to be up there with Bam right now. They're limiting basically 1 hour for a visit with Bam per day. He's been moved over to Kindred Hospital, which is just around the corner from Norton's where he was at. So it's connected there with Frazier Hospital, and just so encouraged to see where Bam was at. Last time I saw Bam was about late March, maybe early April time frame, right around the time COVID was really starting to hit up and they started restricting hospital visits. But to be with him today, to hear the strength in his voice, to be able to talk to him, carry on some conversations, it was truly amazing to see from the last time I was there. And I know he gives, and we all do, full faith to God and His healing hand on him and power of prayer. We know that that's going to continue through his road ahead. And I talked to Mark, and there still is going to be a road of recovery through rehab and a lot of things that Bam's still going to need to do. But I tell you, just so uplifting to see his arm movement and to be able to talk about some things, carry on some conversations. It was wonderful. So just continue to ask for everybody's prayers for Bam. We want to see him back, and we want to see him be with us. If it's in the legislature, if it's also in our community, we just want to see Bam back to full recovery.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Bam's one of us, and I know everybody in our community, as well as I'm sure many people across the state, are keeping him and his family's prayers. And the Carney family in our community has been outstanding for years, and certainly we will continue to keep Bam in our prayers and are thankful for his improvements.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Frankie, you want to get us started off today with the questions?
Sure. I got a question for Mr. Max Wise. Max, give us a little background for you. I don't know if a lot of people know. I know you played a little basketball at the big Campbellsville High School back in your day. Who was your coach? And tell us a bit about some of the fun things that you might have experienced as a high school player or a student there at Campbellsville High School.
I graduated in '93. High school coach at that time was Daryl Atwell. Coach Atwell came in right before my freshman year of high school. Coach Atwell had been actually at Taylor County Middle School, was coaching over there. So I knew Coach Atwell from that time, playing against him, when I was at Campbellsville. In terms of basketball talent during those years, the early 90s at Campbellsville, we had players like Joel Thompson came through there. We had Daniel Johnson, Lamont Matisse. Some of those guys were good players in that era. Coach Atwell was a great man. Thought world of him and still do. I actually him and his wife just celebrated their wedding anniversary over the weekend, so I was able to send a Facebook message to him and Mary. It was interesting being Coach's son. My mom coaching Campbellsville University for a number of years with women's basketball, and then also, being a player myself. I was not any kind of superstar or anything like that. Just tried to always be coachable, try to be a good teammate, try to work hard in practice and do all the little things. Also, in my high school career, played a little on the high school golf team, also played on the tennis team. So, like I said, nothing outstanding, but in terms of being around sports, I've loved what sports have done for me. I think it's made me an all-round person in terms of the job I do as a legislator, also as a parent. I think you learn so many skills, and I'm sure all of you all did, being in sports your whole lives too, of how many things that sports can teach us. It's a teachable thing to be a part of, and so just a great career I've had in a life of being around sports.
Ben, you want to go on?
Sure. I'm going to take it off the topic of sports for a little bit. I know we're a sports podcast, but we're diverse. We're versatile. So I know the way elections are going to happen in the across the United States and Kentucky are still, I believe, up in the air a little bit. So I believe Kentucky announced that anyone can vote by mail-in ballots. I know the right kind of claims that it's can be a form of voter fraud. The left kind of claims it's a form of voter suppression. What's your take on mail-in voting, and what do you think Kentucky should do?
Well, for the primaries, it's coming up here on June 23rd. We've allowed the opportunity to still have a polling location. A lot of that's based off local control in terms of the decision. I think Taylor County right now has got set up 4 polling locations where people can still go in and actually vote. They'll be able to do so on election day. Most of it's still going to be done, though, through absentee ballot. And so it's got to be the initiative, though, of the person to still go. That's taking place right now. If someone wants to go ahead, I know they can watch this podcast tomorrow, as long as it airs, to go and do absentee balloting. I think it's going to be very interesting, though. I know the larger cities of Louisville and also in Lexington, they've got Commonwealth Stadium, and also I don't like calling it Kroger Field, so I still call it Commonwealth Stadium. I've not gotten the Kroger name to it, so I apologize if I'm not being athletically correct on that. And then I think Louisville's also doing the fairgrounds. So it's going to be interesting, in terms of having one location for people still to go to with that. I think you could see some lawsuits that possibly will be filed if we've got some really close elections. I'm not a fan of mail-in voting. I think, through this whole thing, if we can stand in line at Lowe's, we can stand in line at different places, we should be able to still be able the right to vote. And I think we should open up polling locations. If someone still, though, feels that they're over the age of, 65 or underlying health condition, that's okay. If they still want to do the absentee, I think that's perfectly fine. But I think for everyone else, we still should give them every right and opportunity to still go and cast that ballot and not just have one option. So I would not be for mail-in voting at all. I want to still see other options on the table.
Would you be surprised if they did go mail-in voting?
I would be very surprised. I'd be very disappointed if we were to do that. I think we will see what November holds. I think you could see an absolute, revolt by a number of people if they are told that the only thing they can do is mail-in voting. We passed a law that shows voter identification this past legislative session. And with that, it's not just that you have to show a driver's license. It can be any form of identification. And if you don't have an ID on you, you can actually come back and they can give you time to be able to show some type of ID. It could be a credit card. I mean, it could be anything, government assistance card that you may have. I'm not for the mail-in voting. I've had so many also my constituents, they tell me, please don't allow that to be the only thing. So I'm hoping with Kentucky Secretary of State, Michael Adams, working with Governor Beshear, that we still can come to some logical choice on this and not just do mail-in voting.
All right, Max, I'm gonna make this question from Todd. I'll say this. Last week, our first episode we did was the news that just came out that UK was going to play Notre Dame in three-year contract. So what's your take on that? I know you're a big Notre Dame fan. So Todd's the big UK guy. So
I will say this for Polston. I'm glad it's not a UK Notre Dame football contract. And the reason I say that is Kentucky football continues to close the talent gap on so many programs. I think 15 years ago, 20 years ago, if you'd have said Notre Dame UK football, you'd probably say, well, it'd be a good tailgating experience. Maybe not the game. But I will say UK football has really narrowed that with a lot of teams. I think it's going to show this fall. I think UK football, they've surprised people in the past seasons. I think if we have football in the Commonwealth, and I think we will, I think you're going to see UK be right there to battle for that SEC East title. Now, get into basketball. My passion lies with Notre Dame football. Now, Notre Dame basketball, will I watch it? Yes, but I love UK basketball. I like the rivalry, though. I'm glad it upsets the Indiana Hoosier fans. That's what I'm happy about. Anything to upset IU is good. And so the last time Notre Dame and UK played in basketball, you may remember, it was in that Elite Eight game. Mm-hmm. That was that awesome game that UK was able to get, I think, to the Final Four and knock off that Notre Dame team. And going back in history, Kentucky basketball may want to thank Notre Dame because it was Billy Gillespie's last game was when they coached Notre Dame in the NIT that one year. So I'm glad Gillespie's gone. I'm glad Cal's there. So maybe we can look at that contract. There's some good things that can come of that with Notre Dame. And Scott, I know you remember this, and Ben, you may too, when they used to do the Fab Four. It was Louisville, Notre Dame, UK, and Indiana, and they played at different sites. I would love to see that going back. Let's throw Butler in there instead of IU, though. I'm sorry.
Hey, Max, I can tell you that I don't know if it was the first Big Four Classic or the second one, but Jimmy Taylor's dad, Jim Taylor, got us tickets, and we sat about 6 rows up in the Louisville section. And Louisville played Notre Dame, and Kentucky played IU, and it was in the Hoosier Dome. I guess that was the name of it. And it was a great experience. And I'm like you, I wish they never gotten rid of it. It was a wonderful thing, and just rotated around. But I'm like you also. I believe I'd rather have Butler or somebody else in the state of Indiana as opposed to IU.
Yeah, I think we probably can all agree on that. I will go back in terms of, I do think Kentucky football is like one of 4 programs that Notre Dame football has never faced among all 1A FBS schools. I think Kentucky and Auburn out of the SEC, they've never played in a bowl game, regular season game. So out of the SEC, I would love to see both of those games played with Notre Dame football. Even if it's a neutral site, play it in Cincinnati, play it at home and home. I don't care, home and away. But I think it would be great to see. I can't imagine the number of Big Blue Nation fans that would travel to South Bend for that game. It would be an awesome atmosphere. And I'll tell you, as a season ticket holder at Notre Dame, it's a bucket list for so many people that I've taken up there that if, they may watch Notre Dame, they're not passionate about it. But when they come back from that campus with a better appreciation of tradition and of college football, and like I said, it's just it's a really cool atmosphere. So I would like to see the game. I probably, if Kentucky were to knock Notre Dame off in football, I probably would have to go into a weekend of depression because I'm sure John Miller and all my other buddies in town would never let me live it down if Kentucky football were to beat Notre Dame. But I think the talent is closing. Like I said, it's closing.
Hey, Max, I got another question in regards to Notre Dame. So why are you a Notre Dame fan? What happened in your youth or whenever it might have been that triggered you to be Notre Dame football?
It's a great question. It probably goes back to really elementary, middle school, and also my life. I'm Catholic. I'm very devout in my faith. Our family attends Mass regularly, and I think that had a pull to it. But I remember in a young age, I was probably about 12 or 11 years old. That was the Notre Dame of Rocket Ishmael. That was the Notre Dame of Tony Rice, Chris Zorich, a lot of those players from that 88 national title team. So I was 13 at that time. I remember getting one of those starter jackets, had the big leprechaun on the back. You remember those puffy jackets?
Oh, yeah.
Franklin, you probably.
I remember. They
Yeah.
don't know anything about that, but I definitely.
I've seen them a couple times.
Yeah. I think they may have came back in style now. I'm sure that probably Ben Bertram sees them on UK's campus some.
Oh, yeah.
But I just kind of grew up with it. And Scott, you know this. Back in the 80s, there was not the 360 channels now that we can watch college sports on, and it was limited. You had CBS, SEC football. You had ABC with Big 10 or Big 12, and you had NBC with Notre Dame. You didn't have ESPN, Deportes, and all these other channels showing Boise State versus Wyoming or something like that. So that probably was a lot of it. I got to watch it, and I just, I fell in love with it. You just had a passion. Now, I will say this, in terms of applying to Notre Dame as a high school student, I probably could have combined both of my ACT scores and not gotten in at Notre Dame. So even though my kids, hopefully, they would maybe have the opportunity to get in. But it just was one of those schools that fell in love with. Had the opportunity about 15 years ago to get season ticket. And I'm kind of like Rudy. When I opened up that letter, once I sent off this application to get Notre Dame season football tickets and opened up the letter, I thought somebody had punked me. I kind of felt like Manti Te'o when he got catfished. I thought, oh, man, somebody has played a joke on me here. And I had to actually call the athletic office and just verify, did I really get these tickets? Because I'm a nobody. I'm a peon. Like I said, I'm Rudy Rudiger. And I get the letter after I made the application, and I got 4 tickets. I can will them one time to a family member. So probably my 10-year-old little girl is probably going to get them putting her name at one time so she can carry it on.
That's great.
Yeah.
Ben, do you want to go on?
Sure. So obviously, another non-sports question. Sorry. Coronavirus has kind of taken a back seat in the news in recent days. And I know one of the calls to action that we're being seen is defunding police forces. Personally, I have my opinions on that. What do you see in that issue?
Well, and I'm glad you're bringing up the political questions. I don't like, to be the one that's going to dodge things. So thank you all for bringing politics into sports and having a political discussion. It's kind of like abolishing ICE. There was a big push, let's abolish ICE. I think defunding police is the same mantra. I don't see how that's a platform that's going to be good for our country. So how are we going to tell the Minnesota Vikings, the Minnesota Twins, those programs with sports, congratulations. Once you have everything that's going to be available for sports, how are you going to protect? How are you going to, with people on the streets, community back to normal? I have an issue with it. I think we're looking at a sin problem that's happening in the world today too. There's evil that exists, but I don't like also when elected officials make knee-jerk reactions and they rush to something without thinking things through. We need to be very careful when we talk about absolutely defunding something, because it wasn't too long ago we were asking to fund things, but now all of a sudden when you get legislators, council members that start making these decisions, what's that going to look like? What type of then private security are you going to be hiring? What kind of training are they going through? And how are we going to pay for these things? So these are all concepts that we really have to think about. And like I said, it's nothing to take away of what's happening in the world today. Police brutality is a serious issue. We have to do better background checks on police officers. We need to make sure. When I was in the FBI, my background check took 7 months to a year to complete. We should be doing thorough background checks of every police officer, not just FBI agents and CIA case officers. But defunding something like this, I think it's something that I have some hesitations about. Now, no knock warrants. You're probably going to see that on state legislation. I don't know if that has a place in today's time to do those type of things. So I think there's some issues there that we can look at. Let's have some good policy discussion. But if local cities are looking to make this as a rush, I think we're going to have a lot of people that are going to look at those cities and be hesitant on, is this something that really is going to be a long-term fix for a very serious issue that's taking place?
All right, Max, I'll bring it back over to sports. This past weekend, the KBC, KBA, whatever you want to call it, came out and said that they are closing their doors at their facility now because they've got bought out or whatever. I know with all your kids playing volleyball and basketball, you've been up there quite a few times. If you want to give a couple of good memories or bad memories of games being played there, go ahead.
Well, probably one of the best and also one of the worst was one of the games that my son Jackson had at a very young age. I think he was probably in 6th grade, and he was on the team that had a chance to get farther than Quentin Gooden's team that was a travel team with some Taylor kids. And they got beat on a 3-quarter shot at the buzzer of basically throwing a Hail Mary up and it going in and knocking them out. The team was actually from Bowling Green. I think it was out of maybe Warren County. And that was probably, to see him go that far, but then lose on a shot like that, it was probably, best and worst of seeing something happen at that time.
All right, Max, you were talking a minute ago. We had to pause it real quick for a little interruption, but we were talking about the KBA and KBC closing down. If you want to give another good memory or two about the KBC.
Travel basketball, and I will tell you, I know it's going to have, for many people, plus and minuses in terms of those that do travel sports. I know you all been around it. Some of y'all played travel sports. For some people, they may see it as just we're living our kids' lives and we're putting them through all this and, traveling to this state and this state. But I will tell you, for my children, especially Jackson, who's done more travel than any of the other ones at a different level, it's helped his level of competition. It's helped his work ethic. To see him compete against kids and to get, maybe parts of his game that he needs to improve on, parts of his body that he needs to work on, it's been tremendous, for him to be able to play in that kind of atmosphere. I've always, when I've gone up there, I've always, had great respect and to be able to see some talent on those floors. He got to play against the team recently before all the COVID hit that was out of Wisconsin. That was Tyler Hero's previous team that Tyler Hero played on. So Jackson got to play against that type of team that was coming up. So, I love competition. I think you learn in life by being able to compete, but I also think it shows you sportsmanship, how you treat people. And so I've just been fortunate to be around sports and to see that happen. So I'm a big fan of the travel stuff that goes on. Now, we've also done it for Carter and Jackson, too, with baseball. Totally different. I'd rather be inside a gymnasium than on a hot baseball field in July. I will tell you that. Trying to pop up those tents, and I'm trying to break them down, and my wife's saying, hurry up, So much rather be in the basketball gym.
Yeah, I don't know if Frankie and Ben know this, but actually Jackson plays for probably one of the best 8th grade teams in the state of Kentucky. I would have to say they're a tough team breakdown out of Lexington. They're a tough team. I'd take them over several 8th grade teams around the state and the nation.
Well,
I believe it.
The good thing also, I would say, with Jackson is even the Taylor County team that Jackson and his teammates are part of that are separate from travel, just when they compete at the state level, there's some great talent coming up. I will tell you all, on the local scene here for Taylor County sports, and there's some kids over at Campbellsville. It's great to see, and I know we have a healthy rivalry, and I think it's going to be awesome to watch basketball over the next few years as it takes off.
Well, what I know about travel is my son played a lot of travel baseball, teams out of Lexington, Kentucky Baseball Club, stuff like that. You can't get better if you don't play people a little bit better than you.
I agree, Scott.
And when he got to go play in some tournaments where the catcher's going to Ohio State and the pitcher's going to Miami of Ohio and the shortstop's going to Indiana, you find out what you're good at and what you're not good at and how you must improve if you're going to compete at a real high level. And nothing against folks around here, but when you play in the 5th region, you might have 2 pitchers that throw 85 to 88 and everybody else is throwing 80. Yep. But when you go to places like that, everybody's throwing 88 to 95 and they got 4 pitches. So it makes you learn how to play. And I know in basketball, I've been to several events a long time ago, but just following Quentin and some of the teams that he played on as he went through, you can't get better if you don't go play some really good competition. And it makes you better in the long run. So when you come back and play in the 5th region, you should be in pretty good shape.
Well, and I tell you, I'm always a big fan of relationship building. And I think there's nothing better than developing relationships with kids from other areas of the state. That's been awesome to watch. He's got kids, like Alic mentioned, from urban areas. He's also got them from West Kentucky, East Kentucky. And I think in life, the way many times that we're able to solve problems and just to be good people is to develop relationships with others, understanding different people. And I think that's one of the big things also with traveling and playing sports. We've all been around it. You can solve a whole lot of problems on a bus, have some really good conversations, and even after wins and losses, what it's all about.
Frankie?
My question goes to your experience with the FBI. I believe you were an analyst. Can you elaborate or say what you can in regards to what your role was in your time in the FBI?
Yeah. So ever since I was probably in maybe 8th grade, I wanted to work for the FBI. I saw the movie Silence of the Lambs, and
Great movie, by the
yeah,
way.
it's on AMC. It seems like every other month or something like that, rotating through TV. But I saw that movie and I thought, man, I would love to do that. I thought that was an actually bit of movie history for you. That was one of the only movies ever filmed at Quantico. So most of the times Hollywood does it up, but that actually was filmed on location outside of Fredericksburg, Virginia, where Quantico's at. So I saw the movie and I thought, man, this is cool. I had an interest in it and just kind of sought out, what do I want to do? How can I get to that different place to get into the FBI? Didn't know if I needed to be a law enforcement or if I needed a law school degree or what it was. Just kind of kept my sights based off that. And very lucky that, I went on to undergraduate degree in Campbell University, did political science and history. While I was in college in 95 was when the first World Trade Center bombing took place. Then also you had the Oklahoma City bombing take place. You had the Tokyo sarin gas subway attack. You had all these things happen in 1 year. And I thought, man, that is piqued my interest, was to study terrorism. And so UK has got a school of diplomacy, international commerce called the Patterson School. Graduated from there in 1999 thinking I needed to have some type of graduate degree and applied to the FBI. They weren't hiring at that time. So a lot of through the 90s, they weren't hiring. 9/11, as unfortunate as it was fortunate for me and my degree to have something in that field of international affairs, and that's what I did. I studied security, international affairs. The FBI hired me in 2002. I mentioned earlier how long my background check took. And I tell people, if we had social media the way that social media is today, I probably would have had a hard time getting into the FBI. Not that I was a bad person, but just in the world today, everything's on social media. You get tagged in a photo, you get brought into a situation, and it can completely change, your whole expectations of applying for a job. And I tell my students that all the time now. Just be careful what you post. Be careful who tags you in something, because it's like a bullet. You ain't getting it back. It's out there. But in the FBI, I worked intelligence. After Quantico, after I did my training there, my first office was Washington, D.C. headquarters. I worked bioterrorism unit. And I didn't have like I said, anything in chemistry or biology. Just my background happened to be, something I probably could be thrown in and trained in. And I loved it. I got to work intelligence operations. I got to do some really, really neat things. Got to go to CIA headquarters one time, do a briefing. Actually got to do a briefing at the White House. And just fascinating type of work. The men and women there are phenomenal. I tell people all the time, because right now the FBI has been dragged in the mud because of politics on a lot of things that 7th floor supervisor level. The agent on the street doesn't want to be involved in that. They don't want a part of that. They just want to protect the country. And so I was very, very fortunate to work for them. I was only in the FBI about 7 years. Family decision. After living in different locations, I got transferred back to Kentucky. I got to work on the Joint Terrorism Task Force in Lexington, and then was getting ready to make another move because they rotate you kind of like the military. Heather, my wife, was in dental school. We lived apart for, I guess, almost a year. And we had children, and we just said at that time, this is tough to do. So I'm happy with where I'm at in life, and I'm happy I got to live out a childhood dream, because many people couldn't be able to do that. But man, it was fascinating. Every day was something different, so it was really cool.
Absolutely, that's cool.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. Really, on a side note, Taylor County has produced a lot of people in the FBI. We have sent a number of students that have came here. You know Miss Harvey, Scott, and maybe you do too. Miss Harvey's daughter, Elizabeth, she was in the FBI. And so we've had some connections. Her son-in-law is in the FBI.
Yep.
Myself, there, we've had some people from Campbellsville University have got hired on. I've had some former students of mine that have made their way through. So it's really cool to see that somebody from a small town in South Central Kentucky, can get into a job like that without having any family connections into that career path.
Awesome. Ben, you want to go ask?
Sure. So This is kind of a long question, but there's been all this news out there with when the NCAA football is going to start. Who's going to be how many people are going to be allowed in. Basically everything pertaining to that. But I think the NCAA just recently started a practice plan, and their practice plan is on time or the same as what it was last year and years before, which isn't – it's big news. It's good news, but it's not super surprising. But I've come across what has been rumored to be what will happen, and that will be that the crowds are going to be 100% capacity. Some schools will play, some schools won't. He said SEC schools are going to schedule 12 games. Other schools in the country, however, may play 6. But rescheduling would be an option. Like if the team cancels or is not playing and is on that schedule, the opponent will have a chance to reschedule, maybe even as late as a week before. But with the crowds at 100% capacity, do you see, and in your position as a state legislator, do you see any conflict between those two crowds?
That's a great question, and it's something I've been following quite a bit. I've always said college football, you can't have college football without college. And I've always felt like that's why students will be back on some type of capacity. I'll tell you another thing is I would love to see college students be able to get the first right at tickets and not leave them out of the situation. When we look at COVID, we've seen in terms of young people that it's not caused a high level of deaths. We not to say we don't take it serious, we do. But in terms of the chances of probably leading to, fatality, I think college students, should be able to be distanced apart, allow it to be, based off of if it's every game, if it's every, if it's a package of 3 games, whatever it may be. I think the conferences are going to have to come up with on their own what they're going to be able to do. I want to see, selfishly, I want to see college football back. I want to see sports back. Now, as a spectator, if the NFL is no fans or if it's Major League Baseball, just give us something. I think right now the turmoil also in our country, we need sports. Sports can be a good divider to be able to get people off of topic and talk about some other things and get our mind off of this. I think you look at COVID, and I saw this quote, and so I'm going to use this. COVID was the kindling where the race issues became the fire of everything we've seen now. It caused the spark to just blow up. Now, once again, I go back to police brutality and what was wrong in that situation. But I think, man, we were pent up. Everybody was just ready because of just, being confined for so long. I think sports, too, we need to get out. We need to do it safely. We need to do it efficiently. But, man, I want to see sports back, and I want to see people be able to go to athletic events, but still do it in a safe way. I think we can. I think we can do common sense. I'm not going to be upset at Notre Dame as a season ticket holder if they come back and they tell me, you're not going to get all the home games. You're going to get half of them. That's fine. I'll do whatever it is to play my part. We've done this for long enough. I mean, we can make it through. I just want to see it back. I want to see it. I want to see competition. So I hope to see it in that aspect. And I don't think as legislators we'll be able to make the decision on the colleges. I think that's going to come through NCAA, and it's also working with the individual schools. Now, high school sports, we probably as legislators will have some type of input on that. I advised the other day putting together an advisory council. Let all the K groups, KEA, KHSAA, anything that's got a K, and Scott, from being an educator, all the K groups, let them be on a advisory council, put 2 infectious disease experts, make sure a parent is a part of that, but that we need some guidance here. And I'm all for local control. School superintendents know their districts best, but if we need to maybe look at pushing high school football to the spring, maybe that works. Maybe look for high school baseball to start in the fall. Could it happen? I don't know. if they already missed a spring of baseball, those kids are chomping at the bit to get back and playing baseball. Instead of them waiting another year on the calendar, what if we move baseball up? What if football's best to start in the spring? If that's a close contact sport, maybe we know more through the winter. So that's just something to throw out there. And I think as legislators, we can contribute to those discussions. And so I think that's maybe, things that we can look at on the state level.
I definitely think that just by looking through my Twitter feed, as I follow a lot of high school things and parents and so forth, and a lot of the things at KHSAA and different sports media guys, man, those parents are just chomping at the bit for baseball and softball. They're going to Ohio, they're going to Georgia, they're going to Tennessee, they're all over the place because they can't do those things here yet. And some of the proposals I've read, you can't play ball like they're making some proposals. I mean, but I understand that they are very concerned. They don't want to have any liability if someone gets sick and so forth. And I'm sure there's a lot of hoops to jump through. But, man, I hope we get something straightened out for high school, something in September or August, whenever school may start this time, because it's been rough without the locals playing. I know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it certainly has. And like I said, I don't know what it's going to look like, but if we have to think outside of the box and if it's moving calendars around, let's do whatever we can, to get these kids back. I can't imagine and being, you were graduated, didn't see it. My daughter, Grayson, was a junior, but for that senior class, our heart just broke for them, to have that taken away from them. And we all been a part of athletics, or we've been part of something. I don't care if you were on the choir, if you were show choir, if you were just a student in the band or student on the quiz team, man, that was something that's never going to be able to come back in your life. And so I'm just hoping we get back to some normalcy and also some common sense of how we can do this and do it safely.
Yep. Ben, Frankie, y'all have anything else?
I will say I do really feel for the seniors because, as you're graduating, going through everything, it kind of feels, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to go to class tonight and sit for 2 hours? But afterwards, and especially after seeing people not get to experience that it's part of it, and it kind of feels incomplete, I guess, if you don't get to do that. But yeah, we all feel for the seniors, and we hope that the arrangements they made were pleasing to them and they have some sort of high school closure. And another thing I'll say about sports starting, I think the NBA upcoming, their whole process that they've got going on, I think that'll be a huge determinant in other sports. If MLB gets something worked out, which is looking less and less likely every day, but I think it'll happen eventually. I think those two things are if NBA goes on, no problem. Then you got other sports saying, well, why not we do it, But if they go on, even one case, which we've seen before, when they were playing before they canceled, one case can cause it to start all over again. But I really hope the lease can get figured out. I hope it goes well. So yeah.
One of the things we're grappling with right now on the state level, I'm the education chairman of the Senate, is just not just the athletics portion, but also just school starting. What is this going to look like? I can't tell you how many questions I get asked on this, and I get superintendents across the state will contact me. I will tell you as a parent, NTI, the intention of NTI was for snow days. That was not intended to be a semester-long, month-long type of deal. And teachers did their best, parents did their best, but we know, for education value, kids need to be in the seats. And I think online education has a platform in certain areas, but I don't think it's for third graders. I don't think it's for elementary based, for the most part. And I'm just talking as Max Wise, I'll take off the legislator hat, but as a parent, I'm really hoping that we can get 5 days in the classroom because you're going to deal with workforce issues, childcare issues, and parents that also had to take off during that time to have to be at home with their kids. I think they showed there's a great appreciation for educators. There always is. I appreciate our educators. And man, it showed too. When you're trying to do 5th grade, 6th grade, looks like Korean type math with your child, and it's difficult. And so I'm hoping we get back to normalcy. I think some of these guidelines, we need to make sure that these guidelines are realistic. I was glad to see they came out and they said that school buses can be fully embodied with bodies on the school bus. You know, before it was one child every other seat. You'd be running transportation routes all day in certain areas, in certain districts. You couldn't do it. So I think we have to, once again, let's do some common sense. We can do this. And I just hope that we can do as much local control on some of these things. I got faith in Kirby Smith. I got faith in Junior Higdon. I think there's great leadership. And I just mentioned those two because we're doing this right now from Campbellsville. And I know there's some wonderful superintendents out there. They want to get their students back. Scott, you know, as an educator, you need those relationships the first start of school with those kids. You need
Absolutely.
those teachers have got to hug them. They got to love them. Ben, you know what it's like as a student, and so do you, Alic. You know, we got to get schools back. We got to open it up and do it, though, in a safe manner. We can do it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, guys, we're running out of time here. Ben, you want to go ahead and close us out here?
Sure. First of all, we don't like to send a thanks to Senator Wise for being on today. He's a respected member of the community, and everyone respects his opinion, and we appreciate you coming on. If anyone doesn't have anything else to add, then I'll go ahead here. Thank you guys for listening. You can send us a follow and a like on our social media. We are going to be back on with episode 4, and we're going to have another good guest. It'll be head coach of the CU men's basketball team, Brent Vernon. So I know Senator Wise has done a lot of things. She's had a lot of accomplishments, but I believe now being on the Fab 4 podcast will finish it out, and I think that makes the top of the list there.
Without Todd, even better.
Exactly.
Without Todd.
Exactly. But thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back soon.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Thanks, Max. Appreciate it.